this is all relatively new equipment here, just a couple of months old, actually. And everybody's still trying to get the
Okay,
hang of
we're
everything.
good to go.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Audit Committee meeting. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. We have some new members today. We'll do the roll call. We'll start from the left.
Jerry Miskin.
Dick Cody.
Jim Steele.
Ed Lombard.
Michael Hauser.
And we have Brian Thomas and Barbara Puffer that have called in for the meeting. Welcome. Okay, we'll have approval of the minutes of the meeting on May 9th. Are there any comments, corrections, or edits?
I've looked at the minutes, Mr. Chairman. I see no problems with them, and unless there's objection, I move the minutes be approved as presented.
Second, Cody.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved.
Not sure everybody voted, but
All right, public comment. Seeing no public, I don't think there'll be any comments. Items for discussion. The final results of the audit for the year ending September 30th, 2021. We have a copy in front of us, and we will proceed through that. Is Wade online?
Yes, sir, I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Oh, there you are. Well, we'll start at the beginning, and we'll go through them page by page. And if you have comments, just raise your hand, let me know, and we'll have some discussion. Any comments on the independent auditor's report?
what's
All right.
this document here?
No. This. Should be the very first page. No, it's before that.
Before that. I had nothing before that in the package. I just got, here we go. I got it.
Got it? Okay. Any comments on independent auditor's report? All right, we'll move on.
It's a clean report, clean opinion.
Yes. Well, there's a few comments, but. And we'll move, now I'm on page 4, which says the introduction, financial highlights, overview of financial statements, comments. And then page 5 is basic financial statements, government-wide financial statements. Page 6 is fund financial statements. And at the bottom of that page, it goes through the government activities, which is everything except for the stormwater utility and the water utility, which are considered business-type activities. Any questions there? Page 7, page 8, changes in net position, government activities, business activities. Yes.
It seems that this is these are the only two pages that show any prior year numbers. And I was looking at Lee County's financial statements, and I see that they include a 10-year history of net position. To me, 5 years would be more than enough. And changes in net position, fund balances, changes, and et cetera. And then they also show a 5-year history of net revenues. I'm just wondering if we've ever thought about that.
Wade, any comments on that?
And could you repeat that? I couldn't quite hear it all.
On pages, I'm sorry, 6 and,
On page
8?
8, I think.
yeah, and also on page 6 is where we've got the net position, and then on page 8, the changes in net position. This appears to be the only place where I see the prior year numbers for these two particular reports. And I was looking at the Lee County financial statements, and I saw that they include 10-year history of net position, et cetera, and then 5-year history of net revenues. And it seems to me, I don't know why you'd want to include 10 years, but I could certainly see 5-year history, or at minimum a 3-year history of these reports, and just wondering if we'd ever considered that.
So this section of your financial statements is the MD&A, the Management's Discussion and Analysis.
Right,
And
and
of
that's
course,
where I would think those reports would be, or in the supplemental information.
Well, the GASB is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. They set the parameters for how these financial statements are to look. And since you all have a single year set of financial statements, the MD&A is required to have 2 years worth of information in it. Now, if the town elected to prepare what's called an annual comprehensive financial report, in the back of the report, you would have a statistical section which would give you 10 years worth of information, financial information, as well as other demographic, tax revenue information as well. And currently, the town has not elected to prepare an actual ACFR. This is the minimum requirement as required by the state, as well as to meet all GASB standards.
Okay, understand.
Maybe it's something to think about in the future.
And again, so you all know, that's not a determination by Malden and Jenkins. That's a determination by the town. That's something that if you all wanted to do that, we certainly could help you all through that process, but that's not something that we would dictate to you all.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Page 9, page 10. Comments?
Just a clarification, this is Cody. What's included in transportation? It's a big number. What kind of expenses are in there for revenues?
It's gonna be everything related to public works. I believe it's just mostly public works.
So transportation is kind of a odd name for that
Yeah,
category, isn't it?
yes, it is. That's just how they group it.
I was just trying
category.
to think of cars and trucks
Yeah.
and wondering where they all were.
Think of it more like roads
Yeah.
and maintenance of the roads and sidewalks and,
Have we used that terminology consistently? Transportation? Yeah. Okay.
American Rescue Fund. We've got $1,776,000. How about a little more information on what that can be used for?
Kate Sherry Rest from the Finance Department. The American Rescue Plan was funds that were received from the United States government. We have received the first tranche, which is the 1.77. We will get the same thing again in August. Council has appropriated those funds already for stormwater and water activities as they relate to the big 3 projects. And I think maybe, yeah, that's what it's for.
Thank you.
Only, may I, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Only because we're somewhat limited in the uses that were allowed. And those were the ones that really fit. So we made them fit for those projects. And plus, they'll come in quite handy for those 3 projects.
We have to borrow less.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, we may have passed this, but I just want to ask, in the material weakness on accounts payable, it says that the unearned revenues were increased by $1,776,528, among other items that were changed. And I'd like to know where that 1,776,000 increase is reflected in, I guess it would be on page 8, wouldn't it?
So, I'll answer that. If you were to go forward in the statements to page 15,
What's he saying?
the actual balance sheet for your governmental funds, you'll see kind of in the middle right section, the American Rescue Fund. It's got the 1.7 million in cash and 1.7 million in unearned revenue, i.e. a liability as of end of the year. Originally, when those funds were received, it was recorded as revenue. And since the town has not yet spent those funds on allowable activities, you just can't recognize it as revenue as of year end. You had to record it as unearned revenue, and that was what that journal entry was for. But that's where it's recorded there on that governmental fund balance sheet.
Thank you.
I got you. Thank you.
Moving forward, any questions? To make this a little quicker, why don't we kind of page through, and if somebody has a question on a
Good
particular page, we'll stop. So page 11, 12,
Page 12.
page 12, okay?
In the middle, where it says the following factors were considered, the third line down, there's an incomplete sentence. It says pursuant to funding the infrastructure improvements. I assume it belongs to the next sentence.
And this is on page 12.
Yes.
What paragraph?
Well, let's see, it's in the,
That should have been a comma instead of a,
yeah, it's kind of in the middle where it starts out, the following factors were considered in preparing. And it's the third line, and it starts out pursuant to funding the infrastructure improvements. And then and then it says period, but I think it belongs to the next sentence. So it probably should say comma and then continue on ordinance 15-08.
Okay. All right,
And then also, the second to the last sentence in that same paragraph, it should say, where it says towns, it should say apostrophe S, since we only have one town.
okay. Anything else? All right, moving on, we're now to page 13. Yes,
Under non-current liabilities, I'm wondering, the liabilities that are due within 1 year, why are they not current?
I think,
And I'll answer that. That's, again, just a GASB 34, presentation requirement. So you have current liabilities that are typically things like accounts payable, interest, things that are truly due within the next month or two. Then you have long-term liabilities, which are typically your debt, your pension liabilities, anything like that. And so that grouping, within that grouping, you have, obviously, if you have debt, you have a certain amount that is due within the current year, which is technically a current liability. And then the statements that follow, it's presented that way. But here at the full entity-wide level presentation, this is being presented as GASB intended from GASB 34 that was issued way back in 1999. So it's just a presentation purposes, but you're absolutely right. The amounts that are due within 1 year, excuse me, represent compensated absences that we intend to liquidate during the next year, as well as current maturities of your long-term debt that we intend to liquidate within the next year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm turning pages. If you have a question. Up to page 17, moving on. Up to page 20.
I'm wondering on the statements that show the budget amounts and actuals, there were no changes to the original budget, and I read the note. The notes are on page 34. I read that. It would require an amendment, but I'm wondering, do you ever change the original budget?
We do.
Oh, okay,
We just didn't last year. We didn't have any amendments.
okay.
We were in the transition of personnel, and we were running very smoothly. We didn't need any last year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just one other word about that. When there's an unanticipated issue, we have to come back and do a budget amendment, which is, I believe, what you're alluding to. But throughout the year, there'll be times when the council will receive and appropriate funds. We just had it last week. Bay Oaks and Mount House got a donation. So that's amending the budget because they're receiving and appropriating the money at the same time.
Okay,
So if the resolution reads that way, that changes the budget at that point in time.
That was Town Manager Roger Hernstadt for you new members. Okay.
Moving on, building fund, beach access fund.
oh, excuse me.
Oh, yes,
I'm wondering why we do not show the budget versus actual for the capital projects and non-major governmental funds.
what page are you on?
Well, the last budget and actual is on page 24. So then I would have thought that would have been, or I'm sorry, sorry. The last budget and actual is on page 22, and that's the beach access fund. But then I don't see the budget versus actual for the next two funds, the capital projects fund and the non-major governmental funds.
Those items are in our annual or monthly reports that I send out to council. They're just not part of the audit. It's not something that Wade puts in here. And maybe he can speak to that.
Yeah. So again, the GASB is the standard setting body that requires how these financial statements are to be presented. And of course, we've met the minimum requirements that are there. Capital projects funds are not necessarily required, typically because those are done on a project length basis versus an annual basis. I know you all pretty much do it on an annual basis, but if you all wanted those to be in there, we could certainly add them in there as additional supplementary information, but they are not required certainly not capital projects funds, and certainly not non-major special revenue funds. Only major special revenue funds and debt service funds are required to be, as well as your general fund, are required to be within the report.
All right, thank you.
Moving right along, through that section. Now we go into notes to the financial statements, starting with note 1. If you've got questions, just raise your hand. Through note 1, any comments? Okay, note 2. And note 3. Up to note 4, and note 5, and 6. Note 7, long-term obligations, capital lease, self-insurance, post-employment benefits, risk management, comments, contingencies, economic dependency, and note 15 is subsequent events. The town has evaluated all subsequent events through May 11th, and there are no subsequent events listed. However, I think there has been a subsequent event. I don't know if it's material or not. The town currently has 2 water storage facilities, a 1 million gallon tank on North Estero, and then there's a 500 million gallon tank on Linnell Street, which is next to the fire station there by Santini Plaza. There was structural issues at the storage facility on Linnell Street. It could no longer store water, which meant typically during the busy season, the water would be used during the day, and at night they'd fill the tanks back up to keep the pressure maintained. And then during the day they'd go back down, and at night they'd go back up. But they couldn't store water in the Linnell facility. So the town wisely chose to buy water from the town of Bonita Springs. There was a connection to Bonita Springs to the town's water supply system. And they bought water from Bonita Springs in order to keep the supply going during the day and keep the water pressure up in case there was a fire emergency or anything else. Mr. Sansbury, were you aware of that situation?
Actually, I was not. When did that come to light?
That happened in February.
Of 2022?
Yes.
Okay. And has the town entered into any kind of agreements to repair, replace?
They're currently in the repair process. I think the town manager will respond.
Okay, so the way that transpired is that the town was recoating the inside of the tank as a typical periodic maintenance item. And in doing that repair, we realized that there were repairs to not just the interior of the tank, but the exterior tank, and what the contractor who was doing the inside of the tank said that he could not honor the warranty because of the outside issues. So we then authorized him to repair the outside issues in order to get a 20-year warranty on the tank. Now, we buy water from Lee County as on an everyday basis. And because of the concern that Mr. Steele has mentioned, we contacted the city of Bonita Springs to be sure that if for some reason we could not maintain pressure, we could buy water from them. So we're buying water, it doesn't really change per se. Wasn't that we were manufacturing our own water and then we had to go out and buy water. So it was just buying water from vendor A versus vendor B. You know, we don't really consider it material. We just were in the process of buying a York air conditioner for Bay Oaks, and the vendor told us the York air conditioners were 20 weeks out. And we said, how about a train? He said, I can get you a train in 2 weeks. So we bought a train air conditioner. So my point is that we're buying water. If we're manufacturing our own water and had to stop and then buy water, that would be definitely a significant event, because we're buying water from vendor A, Lee County, and then now we had to buy some potentially from vendor B, Bonita Springs. It's a part of a reciprocal relationship that, you know, we and all the municipalities have, that when we have these issues, we cooperate and coordinate with each other. So, I don't, you know, in our minds, it wasn't really a significant event. If the tank was, you know, had to be replaced, which is, you know, $1 million project, that would have, you know, clearly been a significant event, but we didn't cross that threshold in our opinion.
Mr. Stansberry, would you consider this a subsequent event?
Well, you know, typically what you see as far as subsequent events go are your 9/30 year end, the report doesn't get issued until after year end, but some point in time between the time that the report for the year end occurred and the report was issued, you know, you all went out to the bond market and acquired a $10 million bond to develop whatever. Or you refinanced something, or you had a hurricane or something that made significant damage. You know, in this case, it doesn't sound like to me, before the issuance of the report, that yes, there was an issue identified, but as the town manager indicated, certainly the water purchases, that doesn't change. That there's no real effect to the reader of the financial statements for that. And then it doesn't sound like either that there was a contract entered into to materially replace or repair the water tank itself by that point in time. So again, that's to me, that's not necessarily a subsequent event. Again, but I want to make sure that you all understand, these are not my financial statements. These are not Malden and Jenkins' financial statements. These are the town of Fort Myers Beach's financial statements. And so if that was something that you all or the town management thought should be included in the footnotes as a subsequent event, then by all means you could have put that in there. But that was not something that I was aware of. But at this point, I don't think that it needs to be in there. But again, these are your financial statements. So if you all would like that to be in there, that needs to be communicated prior to the issuance of the report.
So is that a decision of the audit committee? I think would be the auditor. And if you don't think it's a subsequent event, we'll let it go at that.
I have a question. How did you find out?
I had a friend that worked in Bonita Springs, and he contacted me in early March and said, you know, that water gallon tank there on Linnell doesn't work, and they're buying water from us. And I thought, I didn't know that. Then I walked by there, and I can see they're doing a lot of construction work, and I thought,
Okay.
must be something to that. So if it's not a subsequent event, we'll leave it at that. Is everybody happy? Okay. Let's move on. I'm up to page 49. Moving on. Now to other reports. And this is the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and so forth and so on. Questions there? Independent auditor's report on compliance with each major federal program, so forth and so on. Federal awards, moving on. Note 1, note 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're at page 57, material weaknesses, and there are a few noted that have been explained. Do people want further explanation or need more information?
Well, we had a significant discussion about these at our last meeting,
Yes.
and it pretty much satisfied my concern, the concern I raised then, and was that a couple of these material weaknesses were repeated from the year before. And the explanation we got at the last meeting was, and you wouldn't expect that, you know, I mean, I wouldn't expect it to have the same material weakness crop up the following year, but the explanation I think we got was that there were staff issues and systems issues that caused these, and they were corrected. And I don't know that they were substantial. The most substantial one, I thought, was the one that Wade explained earlier about the unearned revenue, $1.7 million, $1.8 million. One of the recommendations was that, or one of the comments, observations was that there was no responsible official, or no, I don't know if the term responsible was used, but no official, or somebody needed to go over these transactions to make sure they were conforming. And certainly, if somebody had done that and compared it to last year's audit, or knew about last year's audit, they would have, that would have prompted them to look a little more carefully at the books. But I think Roger explained that we have some sort of a CPA who is overseeing.
Right, so thank you, Ed, and just for the new members and who perhaps didn't see that, we have had a 100% turnover in our financial staff. And as a result of that, unfortunately, some of that transition was abrupt. And therefore, we didn't really necessarily have necessarily a good transference of knowledge, because we had literally nobody who was on staff to transfer knowledge to the new people who were coming in. But I will tell you, we have a very good staff now. And besides Sherry and Joan, they have available to them a very capable governmental CPA to reach out to get advice on a regular basis, literally a daily basis as needed. They are aware of the opportunities to improve. They're, based on I can tell, are happy in their positions and not going anywhere. So consequently, I believe that you'll see an improvement in these items. We're also trying to just really balance, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, the cost of our financial operation in terms, and the size of the town's budget. And you know, we're making a conscious decision, you know, not to add a fifth person there, full-time person there, because we think we can manage the operation fairly well with the 4 regular employees and the contracted CPA. But if the staff up there tells me otherwise, we'll deviate from that. But that's what they've been telling me, and I believe them. The point is that because of that, there's always, when you're running lean, which is, I think, something that we in town of Fort Myers Beach want to try to do, there is a potential that something might not get done, particularly when you have staffing issues. I think we're past that, and we don't have those now. The way I kind of monitor that beyond my, weekly meetings with Sherry, and I'm looking and seeing how fast, when we have to submit something for reimbursement, how fast does that happen? So are we submitting for March's reimbursement to outside agencies, at the end of April and early May, or are we doing it in July? If it's in July, that tells me they're not up to speed, or not keeping up with all the daily tasks that they need to do, and they're falling behind. So, all that being said, we recognize that there's always opportunities to improve. I've been doing this for almost 40 years now, and I can tell you every day, I come in and I look at it from a perspective that there's an opportunity to improve something. And I think our financial staff is very committed and very hardworking. They know the areas they need to work on in this closeout in the upcoming year, and I suspect that many of those issues will be addressed.
Yes.
Yes, on page 59, under the corrective actions, the third paragraph, and then the last paragraph, the second sentence, or the last two sentences, are basically the same as the prior year. And I think that the corrective action perhaps should be expanded on, especially based on what you just said.
I think that I'll be here talking to you all a year from now, and we'll see where we're at. But I do believe that the staffing turnover issue, you expect in the current crazy environment we're in today, that you expect to have, 1 or 2 staff turnover people, or, the governments are stealing our staff, and frankly, we're trying to steal theirs if we can find somebody good. But, but we never anticipate 100% turnover. You never really anticipate that in any operation. And that poses a big challenge, because we had a whole group of people here who never met and worked with Wade, never met and worked with our outside CPA. So it was a pretty significant transition. So from the town's perspective, it's a repeat, but for the staffing perspective, it's a first-time occurrence. So to the extent, as Wade said, you feel that there are additional words that need to be added, we can talk about that. But I think the message is clear enough that it's an opportunity to improve, and we're taking that opportunity very seriously.
Thank you.
And I would just like to say that pretty much everything the town manager just said, from my standpoint, I 100% agree with. I think he said it very well. The reasonings why there were issues, but the current staff that you all have in place, I believe they are fully capable of taking these issues and getting them rectified going forward. Hopefully they will be there for many years to come. You won't have additional turnover. But I do think that it's all of these issues are an indication from the fact that turnover was significant. The town system itself is somewhat difficult to deal with. Those two things combined created some of these issues, and hopefully going forward, we won't see these going forward.
Yeah, Wade mentioned something that I probably should mention to you all, and that is that, ways that you could sort of impact workload. And you all know this from your past work experience or your current work experience, and that is that, you could add resources, people. And the other thing is you could upgrade your tools, in our case, our system. So we've looked at, and we've talked to some other municipalities about upgrading our system. And besides the turmoil of, reacclimating not only the financial staff, but all the people who interface with it, so we're talking about 50 people through this system, it's $125,000 to buy it. It's getting the financial staff up to speed, it's getting all the other staff up to speed, and all trying to run the town on a day-to-day basis while you're doing that. So that's a heck of a lot different than trading in a 10-year-old F-110 pickup truck for a new pickup truck. So while we're looking at all the issues associated with that, I'm very hesitant to do that without a really good plan to how we do that, manage operations, because the sales folks plus people who put out the software, they'll come in and slap it on our server tomorrow. So we're going to take our time and really understand all the resources it's going to take. We may have to have some additional staffing resources to cover the transition to new plant, new system, and old system, and a variety of other things before we move in that direction. But it is on our to-do list, and we do recognize, and I'm glad Wade recognizes the shortcomings of our existing software system. We know we need to upgrade it. We just want to make sure we do it in the right way. And of course, we'll need the council's support to buy the new software when the time comes.
I very much appreciate those comments, Roger. I really felt, and I think I even expressed myself while it was going on, that we rushed the implementation of the last system. There was some objective that we wanted to achieve in time-wise that may have contributed to the problems we've had with this system, or at least using it appropriately. And it sounds to me like your attitude now is we're going to take a calm, cool, and measured approach instead of a rushed approach, and I always support that idea.
Right. So, I appreciate your comments, Ms. Lombard. So, all our directors sit down with me at the beginning of the fiscal year, and they set their objectives for themselves besides their normal day-to-day objectives. And the council's been supportive of a merit-based bonus program that we have in place for our employees. So in the case that Mr. Lombard was alluding to, the finance director set himself a very strict guideline, time frame to implement this thing, because he wanted to get his bonus at the end of the year by having it complete. But at the end of the day, he probably did a disservice by doing that. So, like I said, we all can learn. So we learned that we're not going to do that again, and we're going to have a really good, well thought out plan before we actually order the software and actually move into that phase of things.
Thank you, Roger. Moving on, we've got the Independent Auditor's Management Letter. Comments on that? We've got the Independent Accountant's Report. And that completes the audit numbers. And the Maudlin and Jenkins also included Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, kind of an easier to understand financial report, which talks a little bit about Maudlin and Jenkins, some of their experience and so forth, and then does some charts and graphs on financial matters for the town that are probably, for a non-accountant, much easier to understand. Comments on that report?
I just had a comment, a question for Wade. Is this something you do for all your governmental clients? And why do we include all of the tutorial on the accounting GASBs? Is that?
Yes, so this is what we call our AD&A, the auditors. This is what we call the AD&A, the Auditor's Discussion and Analysis. And we, as your auditors, actually all auditors are required to give all auditees a certain amount of communication at the end of each audit. We choose to do that in a written format. You can do it orally, but we choose to do it in a written format. That's what this document entails. We also try to make it a little bit easier to read, like you indicated, versus the entire financial statements themselves. And so we try to compile everything that we feel like needs to be communicated to the town boards as well as you all in one document. And of course, in the back are all of the recently issued GASB statements and standards. And so some of these will be applicable to the town going forward. Some of these will not be. But we like to make sure that all of our clients are aware of what's coming down the road that may affect their financial reporting and their day-to-day activities. So that's all that's there for. Certainly you can read it if you'd like, but it's there mostly for management as well as the finance department.
Is this going to be on the website or not? Or is this a private communication?
That is certainly up to you all. This is
To put
it's a
these
public.
things on the website for two reasons. One is, there's always a person who's gonna say, oh, they didn't put something on there that they had. Not that we have some of those, we don't have some of those in town. But the other thing is that there are some private sector accountants who are interested in town's financial statements, but they're not really that familiar with GASB per se. So I think rather than have a situation where we get like 100 questions, I think having that information there may divert 10 of them. You know, why do we do things perhaps a little different than they would do for a private client?
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Well, that completes the review of the annual audit. Next item on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before we get to the next item, which I presume would be the request for proposal, do we want to somehow have a motion on sending this to council with our
Exactly.
endorsement? Or
Yes.
is this the time to do that?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the audit committee report that it has reviewed the audit, find it satisfactory, and encourage council to accept it.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is your video member. I have a couple of quick comments I might make before you move on that really didn't need to be made before you had that motion. One is I want to thank you for going through page by page. For a newcomer, that was helpful to see where other people stopped, what the general questions were. To Wade, I want to thank you for the tutorial, because for new folks, the GASB rules are, and the statements, all of that, all the notes are very helpful. And to our town manager, I noticed that Malden and Jenkins have a quite extensive list of continuing education courses. And I would just hope in these improvement plans that the staff has, that perhaps they avail themselves of some of these. That's all.
Thank you.
Good, Bob.
All right, I think, do we have to disconnect Malden and Jenkins now before we go to the next item?
Good idea.
It's probably a good idea to say goodbye, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Wade, very much. Appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you all very much. We appreciate the opportunity to serve the town. If you all have any questions in the future, just feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna let you all delve into this, but I just wanted to mention before I leave, to get back to my desk, is that we can ask, as as Wade said, we can ask the auditors to do more, or just realize that the fee will be, impacted proportionately. And I suspect the fee, just from the way everything else has gone up, and this is the third year of a contract, is gonna go up significantly even if we don't change anything. So if you feel that there's a need for something, by all means, you know, we can ask for it and ask that to be costed out, but be aware that just, we're anticipating our expense for just a general audit in the same way, shape, and form that you just saw it to go up.
What is the annual fee?
The contract was for $45,000. And then for every single audit that he has to do, which is for the stormwater fund, the enterprise funds, we have 3 of those. And so each one of those is an additional $3,500.
So, anyway, we're expecting that to go up just from the way things have gone up. This has been the third year of a contract. So our pricing is from, late 20 teens here. So, plus any additional work that you feel is warranted. So just bear that in mind as you go through your comments. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Good to
Thank
see
you.
new members.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is scope of work for audit bid, which we've been handed out a packet of information. What do the members think about maybe adding items or adjusting the way the report's done? Any comments?
Are you talking about a request for proposal or the audit, the basic audit?
Well, the request for proposal, we talked about the audit. If we want to make changes, we need to include that in the proposal that we're sending out.
Yeah, well, the request for proposal is pretty much the same as it was the last time. You've cleaned it up a lot. Virtually 100% as far as I'm concerned, from what I analyzed the last time. And this one's a little different in that this is an audit and then audits for the 2 additional years. That's all included in the base price. And then in addition to that, there are 2 renewable years, I guess they're called that, at our discretion and the auditor's discretion. And that either one of if that option is exercised, that won't require an additional RFP. That'll be done under some sort of a whatever the proposal will bid it at, and that sounds like a long time to have one auditor, up to 5 years, but and I don't know what others feel about that, but to me it sounds like a long time. About the only other thing I can say, and I've already said that they cleaned this up just really terrifically, is we still had this on page 3, the town selection committee. Now, that's the only time the town selection committee is mentioned in this entire document. I said that last time, and I've verified that's the case this time. I do note, however, that the terminology about the audit committee has changed a little bit further on in the documents, like on page 16. It's now called the Auditor Selection Committee, which in its judgment, the Florida legislature, in its infinite wisdom, decided to change the name of the audit committee in the, at least in the 2019, I think in the 2019 statute, to the Auditor Selection Committee. I'm not sure why they did that. To me, it's confining, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but they're the legislature, and they've done it. So probably what we're talking about here in page 3, I guess, is the town's Auditor Selection Committee. That's my guess anyhow. And my suggestion is, if that's the case, then the term audit ought to be stuck in there as the formal title of the selection committee.
Yes, sir.
Then the whole thing makes sense.
Yes, sir. I will make that change.
Okay.
And the statute did change in September 21, it to the Auditor Selection Committee. You guys are the Audit Committee not the Auditor Selection Committee. The Auditor Selection Committee has to have at least 3 members by statute. 1 member must be from our governing board, and that person will serve as the chair.
That's the Auditor Selection Committee, Sherry.
Correct. And so then you guys you can make your recommendation to the Auditor Selection Committee.
Oh, I got you.
Oh, and then that is the committee that by statute recommends the audit company to the council.
Okay, then 218-391, which established the audit committee for municipalities and so forth.
Yes,
We still have an audit committee, a town audit committee?
correct.
So it's not the Auditor Selection Committee. Wasn't 218-391 amended to use the term Auditor Selection Committee?
I haven't seen that. 218-391 of ours.
I'm looking at 218-391.
I don't have.
Governing, in section 2,
Is that our
parens,
resolution?
shall establish an Auditor Selection Committee.
Page, Ed.
I'm looking at 218-391. The statute, I'm looking at the Florida statute.
He's got the
Oh,
same.
okay.
Oh,
The 2019 statute. Presumably the 2021 statute is the same, but I'm not sure, because you mentioned that one, Sherry. So I don't know if they change the name or not. I don't see audit committee in here. I see auditor selection committee.
it was my understanding that our audit committee is the town's audit committee.
Yeah, what you said makes sense.
Okay,
I just don't know that the statute conforms to what makes sense,
gotcha.
what you and I think makes sense anyhow.
I will
So
forward the statute that I have via email to you all. Actually, I have printed copies I can give you today, and then I'll email it as well.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
And then we can go into discussion about it at the
Yeah.
next meeting,
That'd be
if that will work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sherry, may I, Mr. Chairman? Sherry, would you please repeat the composition of the selection committee again? You were cut off and didn't finish that.
Yes, sir. The composition of the audit committee must be at least 3 members, auditor selection committee, must be at least 3 members. 1 has to include a member of our governing body, and that person will serve as chair of that committee. Then the other 2 people, committee members or more, whichever we decide, or you decide, or the council decides, or the manager decides, I'm not sure who decides who's on that committee, will be determined. And then it will be the auditor selection committee that makes the recommendation to council.
The auditor selection committee or the audit committee?
Auditor selection committee.
The audit committee makes this suggestion to the auditor selection committee. So we're going
Ye-
down
There's-
up the
there's-
chain.
Sherry, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. So there's no reason that the 2 other members of the audit selection committee can't come from the audit committee themselves.
That is correct.
So that would be my recommendation, is for you guys to decide amongst yourselves who you want on that selection. And you can discuss the selection amongst yourselves prior to that. So you're sending an emissary, so to speak, to make the formal recommendation that is really emanating from your committee. So you're not being phased out of the selection process per se. Why they decided to do it this way, I have no idea. But
But
you're-
a council member is the chair of the committee.
yes, and theoretically that would be me.
Right.
Theoretically, but
It's,
that's fine. That's just to run the meeting. I mean,
yeah.
and as I say, you will have already, theoretically, you will have already made your minds up about which way you want to go. So
Superfluous.
it does, but you know what? It must have been a slow year that year in the legislature. So
Well, I gotta say that I'm still confused, and I'll be looking forward to this, is what Sherry's gonna send out, because the statute's pretty clear that the audit committee, one more time, the audit committee is the one that selects and recommends to the council. That's the process. Now, this audit selection committee is a new process, and sounds to me like there's a duplication there unless the statute has been clarified. I'd like to see the clarification in the statutes. Otherwise, I'm just totally confused. But be that as it may, well, Amy, it looks like Amy has something to say.
I hear you talking in the background.
This is Amy Baker.
Yeah, Amy Baker, Town Clerk,
Town
sorry. I hear you talking in the background about the audit committee being able to make their recommendations to the audit selection committee prior. The members of the audit committee that are not on the audit selection committee will not have the ability to see those submitted RFPs because they're going to be under a cone of silence. So that those submitted RFPs are going to be private until they go to council. So let's say there's 3 of you on the committee. The other 5 of you are not going to have the ability to see those submitted bids. So you're not, only the 3 people that are on the selection committee will be able to see the bids.
Well, there's a minimum of 3. There's no reason why all members of the audit committee can't be on a selection committee. I would say that if all 7 members, and probably, I think that's the way it ought to be, really. But I still question this whole process because, as I say, the statute has been pretty clear for years that the audits committee is the one that conducts the evaluation and recommends something to council. Now, there's this new audit selection committee, and I just don't know where the audit committee is. I'd like to see what the statute says about the new role of the audit, whatever the audit committee is.
I do not believe it mentions the audit committee at all.
Well, then, okay.
I'll let you read it and see.
Well, if they don't mention the audit committee, then there is no audit committee anymore. It's now an audit selection committee.
That would have to be clarified by council.
Okay, I mean, somewhere or other, something needs to be cleared up here.
Legal counsel.
Legal counsel.
Very confusing.
It really is. But Mr. Chairman, do I take this all to mean that somehow or other we need to appoint an auditor selection committee, and does this committee have the authority to do that appointment?
I will ask legal counsel who
So
appoints.
we don't know at this point how we get this auditor selection committee going, because we don't know who,
That,
we don't know how to appoint it.
that is correct. And that we can have our answers by June, but, I mean, yes, our next meeting.
We have time for that,
June.
what you're saying.
Yes. What I would like to happen today is just to get your okay to get the bid ready to go out, because it does need to go out early in June if possible.
Yeah, if we still have that authority, I mean, I don't.
Yes, you have the authority to give me the
I wanna know what
okay
the
for
authority of the
this.
audit committee, anyhow, I'm all for it.
I would like, because it has to be out for 30 days. If we have it out for 30 days, then we have basically the month of July, and then August, the auditor selection committee, however that works out, can review it, call in the auditors for interviews, and then finally make the recommendation to council in September, because we have to make the recommendation prior to October 1st. So that's kind of my timeline of what I'm thinking. But we can delve into the auditor selection committee I think it's June 13th would be our next meeting, if that is okay.
Is there a council meeting on June 6th?
Yes.
I plan on leaving June 10th to go to Indiana. Could we meet after June 6th, maybe the 7th or 8th?
What days of the week?
here at all
At all?
for the first 2 weeks of June. That's okay. You still.
What days of the week are those?
June 6th is a Monday.
So you're talking about,
Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday?
yeah.
I have jury duty on the 7th, but I call in at 5 PM the day before to see if I have,
Why don't we, how about June 8th?
hopefully I won't be on a jury.
I don't know what my schedule is, but I'll try and make that if I can.
Well, we'll tentatively do that. Okay,
I will verify that the room is available,
okay.
and I will email you.
All right. So everything is crystal clear?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
are we done going through the RFP? Because this is the first time that I ever looked at it, and I did have a few.
The proposal?
Yeah,
No, make your comment.
okay, all right. On page 3, the second paragraph needs to be replaced, as does the third paragraph on the following page.
Oh, you're right. Third.
Okay,
And on page 7, the time of the contract in item P at the top says it's 1 year with an option for 2 additional years. However, on page 9, in item 2.1, it says it's 3 years with an option for an additional 2 years.
that's what it should be.
Okay, so then it needs to be corrected, I guess, on page 7.
Yep.
Okay, then on page 9, item 2.2.1, in financial statements, where it refers in the third line to OMB Circular A-133, that needs to be replaced with single audit, since we no longer call the audit an A-133 audit. And that same change would also apply to, on the same page, under 2.3.5, at the very bottom, where it says the last line, that needs to be changed. And then, let's see. Oh, 2.2.1, sorry about this. And then on page 10, 2.4, the third bullet point, again, replace OMB Circular A-133 with a single audit.
Where are we?
On page 10, in 2.4, the third bullet point, again, OMB Circular A-133 needs to be replaced with single audit. And I think those were the only corrections with circular, or with the A-133 audit. And on page 12, 2.5.5, it says FY 17, it should say FY 2020. And on page 27,
That would be 2021, right?
well, it says that the most recent financial statement audit that's located on the website, the current year audit isn't on the website yet, so it should, if you go to the website, the most
Will it be
current.
by the time this is issued?
Yes. I will make that correction. I understand your point.
Okay, got it. And then on page 27, Exhibit C, the information does not agree with the information on page 6. I don't know which one is correct. And then on, the last comment is on page 21.7, 21.7, yeah, page 21, item 7. It refers to exhibits A, B, C, and attachment A, but there's no attachment A. So I think it should say
Oh, exhibit.
exhibits 1 and 2 instead of attachment A. That's it.
Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we might be able to add, ask the question of the auditors, what they see out there as far as the most popular software for the finance departments that they come across. You can leverage the RFP to get insight into what the other communities are using. Try to help Roger with the software selection. Then probably ask them if they're selling that particular software. Not that that's a bad thing, but they do sell software.
Would you want that included in the RFP, or is just something that we would discuss at the time when we have some interviews with them?
Whatever you think.
I would think that would be more for the interview time, but that is a great idea. The recommendations that we have been from our CPA in Marathon. He is a financial director for multiple municipalities, so he's given us some recommendations, and one of the ones is also software that Lee County uses, the city of Fort Myers, and the city of Cape Coral. So that's what we're looking at, but we have asked for multiple
And does it have to be on a server? Do you guys do anything in the cloud?
cloud-based.
Good idea. All right, thank you.
What is the process for getting the request for proposal out? Does it go on the website? Do you solicit from auditors? I forget what the process is.
This will be my first one that I've actually been through with the town, so I'm not exactly sure, but what's been explained to me is that it goes out on the website, and they may have some software where it's put out to multiple vendors as well. But I can get clarification and include that in my email to you to give you the process.
Like, who knows? Who knows it? We're lucky.
Amy, yeah, Amy and the new contracts manager. I will include that for you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Member items and reports. Mike, you got anything you want to discuss or report?
No, sir.
Ed?
Nope.
I'm good.
Anyone else? Any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I move we now adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 10:16.
Good.
Noted that our next meeting is June 8th at 9 a.m.
And
If
that has
it's
been
available.
confirmed by Ava,
Yeah.
that that's available.